Walkable cities. So this is one of the topics that it's currently being talked about between designers and architects. Walkable cities are some sort of half a dream for people that, much like architects and designers, want to push for a much better and greener agenda, which is the one that exclude cars or other pollutant vehicles from continue to circulate around cities, because the way cities, blocks, communities, and housing pods are designed today is utterly wrong. It is wrong because we tend to put always the car as the number one favorite method of transportation, whether if it's just about commuting 500 meters from our doors, or if it's just your daily grind to go to work. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that cars are a waste. Cars are actually very useful, but it is about designing a whole new concept for people, which is to prioritize people first and then cars second. This means that when do people go outside the doors, one of the first things they have to see is that going from point A to point B has to be pretty straightforward. It has to be a smooth commute. But the cities of today and the cities of tomorrow are still being built following like an old criteria, which is garage door first and regular doors after. If you notice how new communities have been built, it's where a wide road is laid first, and then we have a series of garages and garages and garages. That is the main feature of the house. So that tells people that it's the car that is the priority, the first thought, not the person. We don't think of ourselves as pedestrians anymore, and this thing pedestrian, especially in North America, has become sort of like a taboo. It's taboo because the absence of public spaces, as we always had the old continent like in Europe, is a totally different argument in countries like Canada and the US. Now, if you do take, for example, large cities, for example, cities like on the West Coast, like New York, or on the West Coast, like in Canada, Vancouver, the way they're shaped, the way their grid have been shaped, was during the modern history, because thus North America being a new continent, it suffered from the technological development, which means that they have put technology ahead of people, believing that was the right way, but it wasn't. It wasn't because after seeing what happened in Europe, where everything was more somehow seen as crooked, the new design for the North American continent would be a constant layout of a 90 degrees grid, going from south to north, from east to west, or vice versa. And what has resulted was, for the first run of the century, the 20th century was somehow good. Cars were being fully developed, more people were buying cars. There wasn't much of a problem with the environment because people weren't aware of the damage that eventually, a few decades after, that will create. Car pollution is now one of the top priorities for climate scientists. And what we have now is communities that they run on oil, cheap oil, especially the new ones, the suburb, the housing part. The housing part is developed for car first. The geography is totally like failed landscape, and how developers are creating new city blocks. And what happened is that once left behind, the old structure of downtown, moving outward when there's like virgin land. Now what we have is Control C and Control V of the McMansion. How is it done through the cookie cutter? How is it being pretty much the same? Even though there has been a bit of like a style update in the past 10 years or so. But I do remember new house subdivision being built north of Toronto in the early 90s, across the beginning of the year 2000s, that all looked the same. The same facade, the same colors, the same bricks, the same garage door, the same driveway path, the same interlocking, the same trims around the windows, those false window snares. They're just there to decorate, but they serve no functions. The same windows, and so it goes along into this copy paste of urbanization phenomenon known as suburbia. Now, suburban being such a new feature in the landscape of humanity, in the sort of like in the architecture and design. What is not suburbia is not a walkable city. Walkable cities, by definition, are cities or part of cities, part of the core of cities, where it's not necessary to constantly pick up cars or drive around. This is a concept that emphasizes public transportation, such as buses, streetcars, and subway. But then again, in this sort of like topic, we have to also specify that the more public transportation you put underground, the more you will have a more sustainable city. If you do think of now, many cities constantly think that by putting buses on the roads, it's going to be the 100% solution, which in part it is, but not 100%, because you're still creating traffic. Now, it is true that traffic is drastically reduced with buses. Think about something like 50 people on each bus, which means that pretty much 50 less cars. If you do the math, if you run probably like a whole fleet of the public transportation system in big cities, we are speaking of thousands of cars that, thanks to public transportation, are not on the road, creating pollution and traffic. Now, what is very, very important to consider is that there are still buses still vehicles still take space. And there are two options to removing wheels on the main surface level, which is number one, you start investing a lot of money. A lot is not in the order of the millions, but in the billions. You have to build subways, so you have to dig. It's a lengthy process, lengthy and costly process, but in the long run, it's the best and safest investment. Take a look at big cities. Cities who have a sophisticated transportation system of underground trains always benefit from less traffic. One exception that I always find very puzzling and a bit of unsettling is the fact that the city we live in, Toronto, has this big issue. It's the fourth largest city in North America. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's roughly getting close to 7 million people around the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area. But it only relies on a 2.5 subway system, being 2.5, which is the main line, the old line, built after World War II, opened in the early 50s, and was the young university line, and then its expansion with the Spadina line, and of course the Green Line, which runs across on Wall Street, west, east, and vice versa. But that's pretty much it, and it stayed like that until 10 years ago, roughly. This new subway, it was like a Fuchsia line, was open, only serving a portion, has very few stops, 4 or 5 stops, pretty much from that, and it serves the North York area of Toronto, which is like close to the northern portion of the cities, between residential and commercial areas. But the system of stops around the 0.5 line, it's spread out, so hopefully it could serve as a public transportation liability for the future. But nonetheless, only now the York University is it's the biggest university in Ontario. What it is for the GTA, roughly 50,000 students. Now there's the extension that runs to the northwest side of Toronto. The actual line extends all the way, reaching the suburb of Vaughan, which is the next municipality northwest of Toronto. Now that this said, there'll still be the issue of transportation and how do we get to the subway stops. We'll still need cars. So building subway is the very first step. You cannot only rely on one. You have to sort of make it a hybrid, which by hybrid you mean that you have subways, you have subway routes, and you do connect them through major hubs with either train stations or bus routes. But the most important are streetcars. The streetcars are very, very useful, especially because they do run on electricity, and they don't depend on fossil fuel or some sort of fossil fuel or hybrid system like currently buses are doing. So the solution, like the great solution to find a way to reduce the traffic and the pollution, is to have this sort of like public transportation system, which will have different types of methods. So, and then again, it will be subways, some buses, and streetcars. Why streetcars? Well, streetcars always were one of the most important transportation systems back until the modern ages, the post-industrialization era. Up until like the end of the 19th century, all the way through the 20th and 21st centuries, we've seen the streetcars. Their usage going up and down, especially downwards, when in the early 20th centuries the car industry was booming and many corporations lobbied to dismantle the streetcar industry, and they almost succeeded to totally run it to the ground. But now we have the need to bring back fossil fuel alternatives, and it is a whole integration with the Walkable City. The Walkable City is also a city that takes care of the energy sources. It is not a city anymore while you have to open the door, drive 5, 10, 15 minutes to reach your point of interest. It will be a grocery store, your electronics store, your clothing store, or your cinema or restaurant. So the city of the future, which is the Walkable City, is a city where you can literally open your door and walk with your family, walk with your dog, walk with your friends, and reach your destination within minutes. By minutes, I mean literally 5 to 10 minutes walking. But what does this mean? This means that we cannot have retails and shop and commerce area as we see them now. We cannot continue to have colossal structures that are only reachable by commuting through collectors and highways. Yes, shopping centers are useful, especially for those who don't live near city centers, especially for those who live in small towns. But where's the problem right there? The problem for small towns is that they grow these huge colossal centers and shut down the local stores. And local stores always spawn around Main Street. Main Street always being the heart of every single town, whether it's your 5,000 people country town or the old historical center of a metropolis, like it could be New York, Seattle, or Toronto. Now, what we do have is the disappearance of Main Street. Why? Main Street disappeared in the last century because building codes and urban codes changed. They don't allow anymore for traffic to reach downtown. Why? Because of traffic volume, but also because of pollution. And how do we reach downtown? Either we go with the bus, and City of Toronto has alternative, has plenty of underground shops and commercial activities. Also because during the winter, the long winters of Canada, that's where many people seek refuge. However, the issue remains on what should we do to build better communities. We have to rethink the retail. We have to rethink it and commemorate into what used to be and taking it back, which means to incentivize the city. Any big city should incentivize people to open local shops. Slow down the franchise boom. And as you can notice, Canada is being the battlefield of franchise. If you have ever the chance to go to New York, you will see one thing that it's pretty astonishing, which is Manhattan, high commercial, high retail price, and it has its McDonald's, Starbucks, pretty much everywhere. However, if you go to Brooklyn, which is basically, it's like stepping back in time. Why? Because the amount of franchise, especially on the west side of Brooklyn, it's virtually lower than the other cities. So you can walk and still find places that have the local shops, mom and pop shop. I've been there, I ate, and I bought stuff that I was used to buy on big franchise stores. Those big pharmacies where they sell from diapers to candies, from prescription drugs to chips. So you step into a sort of like different retail and commerce location definition. The philosophy behind this is to keep these blocks, the city blocks, for maybe corporate free. Well, that doesn't mean that you don't have corporate operating as more retail, but you won't have that sort of like Disneyland that many highways or important road look like. While you drive, you will go through a series of signs and advertisements, and you will see that the landscape, it's literally a commercial interaction. There's nothing else. There are no landmarks anymore. There are almost no features to recognize certain areas of cities. You will be bound to absorb commercial messages, ads while you drive your car. Listen to radio that pushes for more ads, car ads or food ads, because the whole thing ties together. You drive, going through the drive-through. So there's a connection between cars and food. And they're both essential. You need food to continue, you need to work, to continue to stay alive, and you need to work to stay alive because you need food to buy food. That's how it goes. So it's a very powerful helix that falls on each other. It depends on each other. Now, the walkable cities is something that drifts away from this concept. The car does still exist, but in the future, the walkable cities, we're speaking of a future not too far from today, in the next 10 years, for example, will be very detrimental to build sustainable neighborhoods. We won't need any more houses with housing parts with dead end that lead to nowhere. We won't have any more garage being the main feature of a single house. What we will need will be homes very close to one another, with trees featured along every street. Why trees? Trees don't only work as decoration, but they have their purpose. They shade the area to control the temperatures that the asphalt and the ground absorb. They also act as a safety issue, because they're a row of trees that separates the pedestrian side and the road for the car. other cars and vehicles go by, acts as sort of like a shield. And seeing green is much more pleasant than seeing asphalt or grey buildings or brick, rows of bricks and the rows of bricks as we see now today. Now, the Walkable City is also the city where you will have your commute from your doorsteps to the bus station or to the subway station, where you won't need to take the car. So this calls for a better grid for the whole city. But that doesn't mean to develop new land. We already have. There are many parts of cities currently that exist for now that can be retrofitted. Abandoned areas, industrial areas that can be retrofitted to become the walkable cities. It's not that just pedestrian are benefits, but they are certainly a first step that never goes to its second one. Pedestrians are very important because they allow people to really leave the city. It's not a nice view when you just don't know your cities, because the only interaction you have with the city is through a road, a traffic jam, or an intersection, or the collector that speeds you to a broader highway that eventually you go home, and then you see all this building and you know nothing of it, because the only interaction is for you to reach a certain part of town for work, and you don't want to go back there because you have no motivation to go back where you work after your shift is done. So the walkable city has to be also interesting. It has to offer sort of variety of entertainment mixed with green areas, walkable path where cars are not anymore the main focus of the dynamic of the city. Cars will be essential only for long trips, only to move to other part of towns. So a car will still be an essential, but not the primary. We'll have to promote bike sharing, electric car sharing, alternative fuel consumptions, so solar panels, cars that, much like hybrid built by Toyota or other manufacturers, or even Tesla cars, 100% electric cars, they will be the only four wheels going around in the future. The next 10 years are very important for the electric cars, as they will define the century once and forever. The second part of the walkable city that needs to be also be taken care of are the building itself. Many cities have buildings that are virtually rotting to the core. There's an aesthetic to it. The aesthetic is also to have a pleasant scenery for people to go and walk the city. It's not enough just to put the park. It's not enough only to offer bike lanes, which are very essential. However, it's not everything. The second portion is also to consider the aesthetic. So first is the functionality, and second is the aesthetic. You have to please the eye. You have to motivate people to seek peculiar path around that street or the other one. You have to consider why people should literally start walking to reach their cafe, the library, or their workplaces. And the geography of the future for the building of new blocks has to be wrapped around people. Again, I've been very redundant with this concept. Why? Because going back to what we said about the grid, the 90-degree grid of city blocks, it's meant for cars. It's not meant for people. A person does not have the time nor the speed and the force to walk for miles, turning left constantly or right at 90 degrees to its destination. It has to be a straight point from A to B. And we should have done long time ago with cars, but we didn't bother because what we thought that the grid would work would be the final solution to have the best cities. And it was wrong. It is wrong right now more than ever, because if you were to if you have to drive with your car for 3-4 kilometers, in which a portion of town, you'll be driving left and right rather than go from point A from point B, because there's no boulevard that can cut through 45 degrees or a slanted angle that allows you to minimize time and wasting your path. So there's a lack of foresight in the building of cities. And nowadays, if you were to walk from point A to point B, let's say in a street of Paris, reaching 1 square to reach another side of town, or whether you go cities like Barcelona or Milan or Rome, you can still walk a decent straight line. It allows you to save plenty of time and also mileage. So you don't have to constantly drive 10 kilometers to the left and the right, only to do 5 kilometers of straight line. And the new buildings will have to be more organic. They cannot be warehouses with paint facades to resemble buildings. They'll have to be round corners. They have to be more organic and more dynamic, would please the eyes. The postmodernism has to be that defeating the modernism with a square box is the way to build the future of the city, which is the walkable cities. And even as we have all buildings that are square boxes made of prefab, we can retrofit dying commercial centers, all those empty malls. We can just partially restructure them or enhance them and make city blocks resemble walkable cities. Making walkable cities means that we have to build a new transportation system. A new transportation system that is fit for the people. So when we do build a city of the future, the walkable city, we have to consider one other thing, which is very important. That we don't need to expand. We don't need to build and destroy new land. We don't need to mow down entire wood areas of forest just because we need some virgin land. If you take a look at all the abandoned warehouses that are located downtowns, or all those government buildings that are left there to rot, we can retrofit them and build walkable cities. So cities where I can go, open my door, and walk down to the corner shop and buy my grocery. And the reason that by having this type of business, we can increase the output of the economy, which means that more people will have more private entities, more commerce, and can employ people to work locally. So it's not about me and you driving 20 kilometers, driving 1 hour, staying in the traffic to go work for minimum wage to the shopping center to flip burgers or to sell shoes or whatever. You can still work around the corner, nobody owns a car, even though the minimum wage, but you're minimizing the expenditure of driving. So there will be no cars, no insurance money needed whatsoever. You'll still walk around the corner at the more decent times, and your shift will be more organic than just punching your cards to work for a faceless corporation. And the walkable city will also have to feature not only the efficiency but also the human aspect. So we just spoke about the aesthetic, and also has to be with the input of people. So people will have to give a contribution. They have to live the city, because you not just use it as a commercial avenue. There's Main Street, oh, let's go shop there. No, it's not only that. It's about reclaiming the public spaces. So you have to have people that live the cities. They participate into the growth of park, plant trees, decorate the city walks, perform live music in parks, exhibition on the outdoor. So the city can literally be a public place then again. And much like Europe, where you have the venue with the coffee and the pedestrian area, with tables and parasols where people can enjoy the outdoors. These are things that are virtually forbidden in North America. And I say virtually forbidden because there are, but it's still, the patios and the outdoor are still an extension of the interiors, bound by regulation and city codes. The same city codes that build cities written by bureaucrats who have no idea what does mean architectural design, what does it mean walkable city, what does it mean a greener cities. They think that green is just like another painting that you can just spray around, take it from the from some sort of like copy paste of bushes and trees spread around. And this sort of like philosophy, bad philosophy, has hurt so many people, so many communities. That's why we have sad cities where crime sprawls, because we put our vehicles first, and bad business right there on the line. So we allow that trucks roam around. We have abandoned warehouse that partially function, but still somehow managed to be allowed to operate in places where they shouldn't be, near schools, near residential areas. And the city of the future would have to be built in very specific tiers. You can't have any more schools, kindergarten laying close to truck depots or parking lots. Already some schools in North America resembles factories. They are ugly. We cannot have the luxury of having this sort of like industrial landscape for the city of the future. The Walkable City is also will feature integrated buildings, so you won't have any more the splurging of the land. You have to rethink it. You have to build vertically rather than horizontally. Even though you have the land outside the city cores to spread around, you shouldn't. You have to reuse the space that you already have. You have to rethink on how we live right now, which means that you could still have the ability to have cars accessing doors throughout the main street, but you only do it by allowing certain types of vehicles. Some commercial vehicles, electric vehicle, hybrid vehicle, and you keep the pollution outside. So the pollution that gets mixed between industrial area and the residential, there'll be a difference. There won't be any more a blurred line. Okay. As of now, the stench, the smell, that the sound, the noise pollution that overwhelms every city right now won't be anymore. Electric cars don't emit sound. It's a very gentle sound. The only thing will be the voice of the people who are taking and enjoying the streets. There'll be live music, live concerts, the sound of people enjoying coffees, chit chats. It will be virtually like going back in time, going back 100, 150 years ago. Well, even big metropolis like London or Los Angeles whatsoever had people walking everywhere before the ravaging of the car destroyed the urban planning. So what is necessary is to think that the people that will have to oversee the buildings of the city of the future cannot be the people that so far have built the modern cities. We cannot get ourselves have bureaucrats, lawyers be the exclusive point of those writing and designing cities, codes, or roads, or have to engage a movement that implies what designers and architects can progressively reshape cities. We'll have to think that we cannot put numbers before people. Yes, numbers are important, but numbers mean nothing if people are not comfortable in the city. They pay taxes and they live and spend their money. So this only will basically enhance cities. It will bring more people, will attract more people to buy real estate markets, to spend more money. Cities like Portland, Oregon, the west of the United States, in the 70s, they heavily invested in public infrastructure like bike lanes. And 30-40 years ago, it was something that many people deemed as something being crazy, but it paid off. It was a gamble, but that's because there's a hive of progressive thinkers in the north part of the West Coast that pushed for a long-term investment going against all the odds. But they knew from their own experience and probably from their personal entourage, the personal endeavor of providing a better service for the cities, that bike lanes were in the 70s or 80s were the future for the years to come. Nowadays, biking is virtually a struggle. I would say. Not impossible, but it has it's sort of like problematic. Even if you try to bike in areas where there's a low traffic volume, drivers will still be careless. Drivers don't think about pedestrians. Drivers don't think about bikers. Drivers think about other drivers. They think about not bumping into other drivers because they don't want to create trouble, because they don't want their car being wrecked, because they want the premium to go up. So it's drivers that think about the drivers, whereas pedestrians have to think about drivers and other pedestrians to move around. And there you go. What the other problematic is that cars are not only pollutant, but cars, as we know right now, have to be reshaped into more sustainable technologies. We have the technologies, it's just about implemented in the right way. We always had for many years, for many decades, the ability to run cars by electricity, but we never wanted because it wasn't profitable for certain corporation, for the tire corporation, for the whole industry, for the car manufacturing, and so on and so on, all the way down into that sort of like bottomless pit of interest and money. The possible thing that we have to plan is to be very careful of who we do vote, and not in national election, but in municipalities, the wards. Read carefully what is the program of these people. If they don't prioritize your future, they're not good candidates. If they put ahead of your interests, personal gains, like it has been happening for decades in the last century or two. Well, by building new cities because they promise the El Dorado of new opportunities throughout developing areas, but eventually it turns out that cities are literally becoming more and more polluted. So for the years to come, for the next 10 to 20 years, we have to focus on leaving something for the next generation that is a clean environment, clean industry. We cannot allow ourselves to continue to have fossil fuel run the cities. We'll have at least diminishing by a large amount before we can be prepared to go fossil fuel free.